There's no question that Israel is not a strategic asset to the United States. And indeed, if you look at what's going on in the Middle East today, it's clear that Israel is a strategic liability for the United States. I would emphasize that since the administration of Jimmy Carter, every United States president has worked hard to get Israel to accept a two-state solution, because American presidents and the American foreign policy establishment in general has long understood that if you're going to put an end to the Israel-Palestine problem, you're going to get real stability surrounding Israel. You had to have a two-state solution. But we have been unable to get a two-state solution. Instead, we've ended up with an apartheid Israel. And the end result of that is the mess that you see today. This tells you that Israel is a strategic liability. Now, some people say, we support Israel unconditionally, not for strategic reasons, but for moral reasons. Well, if you look at what's going on in Gaza today, it is impossible to make the argument that we should support Israel for moral reasons. In fact, we shouldn't support Israel if you're going to, bring in the moral dimension. But what this all says is that there is no strategic case for supporting Israel unconditionally, and there is no moral case for supporting Israel unconditionally. Therefore, why do we support Israel the way we do? Why are we joined at the hip with Israel? Why do we have this relationship which is unparalleled in modern history? And the answer is the Israel lobby. And the fact is, in the United States, we have this Israel lobby. We have an Israel lobby that is a remarkably powerful interest group that works over time to make sure that the United States supports Israel unconditionally. And anyone who comes along and criticizes Israel or criticizes the lobby or criticizes the relationship between the United States and Israel, points out that it doesn't make strategic or moral sense, is going to be attacked. And there is a good chance that that person's career will be ended. And the end result of all this is hardly anybody is willing to stand up and say the emperor has no clothes. You just don't have any real discussion in the United States. And I would argue you no longer have such a discussion in Britain or in Europe more generally on whether it makes sense to support Israel unconditionally. And again, it's because of the lobby. I mean, look at what happened to Jeremy Corbyn in Britain. I don't believe for one second that Jeremy Corbyn was an anti-Semite, but the British version of the Israel lobby went after him hammer and tongue and did a successful job of portraying him as an anti-Semite and making the argument that the Labour Party, had been infected with anti-Semitism. And I believe the lobby's great concern was that Jeremy Corbyn was critical of Israel, that Labour was critical of Israel, and if Labour came to power and Corbyn was the prime minister, he would go after Israel on human rights grounds. And the best way to avoid that is to go after Corbyn and make sure he doesn't become prime minister, which is exactly what happened. So you have this situation where Israel gets unconditional support from the United States, and increasingly so from Europe as well. And you have a situation like the one that we have today. Now, my final point on this is that I believe, and Steve Walton and I argued this when we wrote our article and then book on the Israel lobby, that this unconditional support is not only bad for the United States, it's bad for Israel as well. In other words, the lobby's efforts to get the United States to never criticize Israel and support it no matter what it did has allowed Israel to turn itself into an apartheid state. And it has allowed Israel to avoid adopting a two-state solution. If we meaning the United States, had been able to put enormous pressure on Israel and get it to accept the two-state solution, I believe we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in today. The Israelis would not be in the mess they're in today. But that was impossible to do, and here we are.